Wake up each morning like something good is going to happen. I wrote that down. I made up my mind that the first thing in my head before I began my day is to hold on to that feeling that something good is going to happen. And you might think, well, why would you do that? And that's because when you resist joy and you resist happiness, you're not even thinking in any way that something good is going to happen to you personally. That's how I was. And it made me wonder. That's pretty negative thinking. So I wrote that down. And I started to practice it. Something good is going to happen today. And I know you're going to understand this one. Because each of us here have been in trials and in circumstances, in situations like I talked to you last week with my friend in combat, where why is he living after being wounded so many times? So many times, why is he living? And I think that's all of us. We all suffer wounds, hurtful things that happen to you. Those wounds, right? Sometimes we're scarred with them. And sometimes we're the ones that create the scars, right? And that's why I wrote that down. So I wrote this. Celebrate. I'm still here. I wrote that down. I will celebrate that I am still here. So every day I get up, Lord God, Creator, Master of the universe, thank you. I'm still here. He's not done with me. There's still something I need to do. I don't know what it is. Not yet. But one day, I'm going to know. So I wrote down, celebrate, I'm still here. These are the actual things that I wrote down after we had the ceremonies and the burial for my sister. Because I wanted to be different. I wanted to take an active role in being different. Sometimes we see people happy and joyful and you're thinking, man, they're not normal people. You don't feel like you belong in that group of people that seem to find joy and happiness around every corner. You feel like, wow, why aren't I experiencing that? So you have to celebrate that you're here, that you're still here. With all the scars, with all the wounds, we're still here. And the other one I wrote down because my sister taught me that. Live for the moment. My sister had the ability to live for the moment. To be happy and to bring joy into your life. She treated strangers like if she knew them 100 years. I said that at her ceremony because that place was so full of friends that she had worked with throughout the years and family. Plus she was going to a new church. And some of the people there she didn't even know more than 2 weeks. And some of the people there she had known since her childhood, like me, for 50 and 57, 60 years. And I said to those people, that was my sister. Because it didn't matter whether she knew just for 6 days or 60 years. You were her friend. She treated you like a lifelong friend. That's how she created love in her environment. She embraced love. She embraced people. Where the rest of us are like, oh man, I really don't know if I know that person that long. I better wait. She was not that way at all. Those people that even knew her only this much came to me to tell me, your sister is the most beautiful person I ever met in my life. They only known her for 2 weeks. Other people were there that knew her for decades. And they weren't crying. They were so happy that she came into their life. Because when they got up there to witness about her, oh man, all the stories, all the beautiful stories they were telling. It was wonderful. So I wrote that down. Live for the moment. This is the actual notes that I put in that book on my dresser that night. Sometimes we have to change things about ourselves, and that's why I'm telling you this story about what had happened. That I felt I had to do some changing, which meant telling my sister the truth. So I wrote this down. Be the procreator of change. That we can change. We have the tools. We have the energy. We have the heart and the spirit to change. To change direction in a positive way, even though it could be painful at times. When I went to my sister to ask for forgiveness, it wasn't like I was in some kind of program. It was my guilt. I had to talk to her. I had to tell her the truth. I had to be the person that stepped up to her and looked into her eyes and tell her. So I wrote, be the procreator of change. Because at that moment, that burden that I put on my back, because I had literally put that burden on my back. She did it. I'm the one that carried that weight. I decided I was going to do it, and that's what I did. Little by little, I did it. Just like all the stones you see here, one at a time, I start building that wall. One at a time between me and the people that love me most. I kept building that wall. So I decided, I can be the person. I can be the procreator of change, and I wrote that down. Then I wrote, each day we have a gift from God. It's the greatest gift of all. How many times are we going to dispose that gift? How many times are we going to look at it sitting on the table, waiting for us to unwrap it, so we can experience some joy and resist doing it because you're thinking in your head, like I was maybe, I was thinking I don't deserve it. But every day, like this beautiful day right here today, it's never going to happen again. We talked about that. This is a gift. A gift where you're given the opportunity to embrace it and to do the things and resurrect the inner human being that you know you can be, that I knew I could be when I went to my sister. I had to do it. I don't like the word guilt, but it's the only word I have to describe why I had to take action. The weight of it was too much. My father, he had big problems, and that's why I was put into foster care. And you name it, he had that problem. It was destroying him, and it was destroying his family. And my mother voluntarily put us into foster care to save us, thinking somehow, some way she was going to change her man, some way, somehow. My life, from the time I was born to the time I left that home, was a life of terror and horror. It'd be horror, and there'd be a respite, and then it'd be terror. That's what my life was. I don't know how I endured it. But I kept thinking, he's my father. Why is he doing this? Why is he hurting everybody? So because of it, we went into foster care. In the very end, I made certain that each of my children knew their grandfather. I did not deprive my parents from my children. My children needed to know where they came from. And when they were born and came into this world, my father was a different man. He'd found his way back. I tell you about this because, see, my father gave me the road map to hell. He gave me the blueprint of how to get there because of the way he was. This was what he was teaching me. He was teaching me to be this way. This is like, I didn't know any better. I was thinking this is how it is. You're born and then life is hell. You're born and then you have to see your father beat your mother half to death. And not only that, beat her every week. And not only that, always happen on a Friday. And then he'd be absent and gone. That was my life. And then he'd come back. And then it'd begin all over again. My father literally showed me the way to be, because I could either go that path, reject it, and if I reject it, it would just naturally be better, right? So that's what I did. Because of his teaching, I was able to see clearly there's a better way. There was no anxious moments of decision making about making life better and being happy and being a better father. All these things that he was, that force, that evil force that had him in its grip at that time, was how I learned the opposite, that I was able to go the different path. That path led me to a good life. My experiences with him, everything, all the tragic things, led me to make better decisions and be better. It was easy. I didn't have to jump off a cliff. I didn't have to spiral down to the point where I would lose my soul, because that's what was happening to my father. I saw it happen. When we were reunited 7 years later, he was different. And I had more brothers, 2 more sisters, and I couldn't believe this was the same house. Everything had changed. It was a miracle. It was because my mother's faith. My mother had so much faith that things would always turn out well. It was unbelievable. She'd wear sunglasses in the morning when she put us on the bus to school, so no one would see how badly bruised her face was. But that didn't stop her from making sure that we got to where we needed to be. Because she was so full of hope. So when I went away and my sister went away, it was something that just happened. But when we returned, it was different. I'll never forget when I was a little boy, before we went into foster care, people would knock on my mother's door, and I'd be walking around following her, and they'd talk. Next thing you know, my mother would go into the kitchen, and she'd come out with eggs in her apron, give the eggs to the neighbor. Next day, someone knocked on the door. She'd take a bowl from the woman, go into the kitchen and put all kinds of flour into the bowl and give it to her. And I'm thinking, man, this lady's giving away our food. There was nothing she wouldn't do for a neighbor who was in need. If it was a little money, she'd give it to them, even knowing that she would get in trouble from my father for giving money away, that it would cost her. She would do it. Sometimes people came over, they'd need, lard, oil, flour, sugar, salt, you name it, and she would give it away right there at the door. So when finally my father couldn't work, he'd had an accident. So now he had no money, he couldn't drink, he was in a lot of pain, he was suffering, and we were going to be evicted. That's just the bottom line. And my mother kept telling him, stop worrying. Everything's going to be okay. And I'm thinking, this is the lady that catches hell from this man, and she's comforting him. It was unbelievable for me to witness that. But then something happened. People start knocking on the door, and they say, we heard about your husband. They brought food. Another knock on the door, more food. Another knock on the door, someone cooked meals, more hot food.